What's that? Take cover. It's another heretic!
Hello, everyone. This is another heretic or Brother Nathan, whichever you prefer. Today, I'm going to read this article here from thetorah.com on the origins of the biblical Pesach or Passover. However you pronounce this, I'm not too good at foreign languages. Nevertheless, this article is very interesting, and I cite it in one of my most recent books, which I'd like to talk to you about before we get started here. So if you go to my website, anabaptistapologist.com, and you go to the library tab, scroll all the way down, you will find my two most recent books or booklets, which are available for free, digital copies, and then you can just print them at home, distribute them, burn them, whatever you want to do, but it's free. So you go all the way down and you'll find the Meatless Kingdom, which is my most recent study on the topic of animal sacrifices and what disciples of Jesus Christ can eat. Herbs only versus meat versus clean and unclean animals, and that whole discussion there. So this article I reference in this particular book here, The Meatless Kingdom, and The Meatless Kingdom is basically an expansion of topics that are brought up in this book, The Weak Brethren Doubting Paul. And in this book, I look at Paul's claims to being an apostle, as well as some of his doctrines, namely his gospel, and also the debate or the controversy regarding herbs versus meat in the epistles of Paul and what that looks like, situating it in the historical context, looking at scholarship, among other things. So the Meatless Kingdom really is an expansion of the topics briefly discussed here in subsection 2. So the Meatless Kingdom really is sort of a sequel to these essays or an elaboration of these essays here. So again, both are free. Both are available on my websites. Another website that I'd like to mention is my website, doubtingpaul.com. And doubtingpaul.com actually serves as an online version of the book. So all the pages here are basically each section and subsection, beginning with the context, going all the way through the entire book. So this version not only is free, but I'm practically paying you to read this thing because I have to pay to have this website in existence. In addition to that, if you scroll all the way down, you can find the free PDF booklet. You click here, and it pops up here as well. And then you can print the entire website at home. So I go to very careful lengths to make sure that everything that I believe is out there for everyone to read and to know. We need to have open and honest discussions, and all of this is just made available to you for free for whatever you wish to do with it. So I would encourage you to go to those places, avail yourself of these resources. Again, it's all free. Now, on to the topic at hand. The origins of the biblical Passover. Again, this is all available for free here. I reference it in this book, which I will display here. So this article is referenced as one of my sources in this book here. And here I'll give you the contents just so that you can sort of preview The Origins of the Biblical Passover, Dr. Christine Henriksen Garroway. So I'm going to do my very best to pronounce these terms correctly. Forgive me if I fail. Language is not my talent. So, non-Jewish influence on Hanukkah. On Hanukkah, we bring out dreidels, sufganot, I think, latkes, and of course, a menorah. Again, I'm going to butcher some of these terms. Please forgive me. A menorah to light Hanukkah candles, but only that last item comes from rabbinic halakha. The first three customs developed over time in Europe. For example, the dreidel originated as a German gambling game. Even the 4 Hebrew letters, which are displayed here, which ostensibly stand for the Hebrew phase. I can't read Hebrew, sorry, but it's here in the article. A great miracle happened there, are really just shorthand for the Yiddish instructions nicht, nothing, halb, half, ganz, all, and stell, ein, put in. That was Europe. In America, Hanukkah falls smack in the middle of Christmas season when corporate America heads back into the Balak on account of all the gifts, decorations, and trimmings purchased for, quote, decking the halls. Some Jews have felt the need to keep up with the Joneses, so they too purchase presents, decorate their houses with lights, and make jokes about Santa's backup, Hanukkah Harry. All of these things have become, for many, part of the modern America Hanukkah experience. Perhaps the best example of the phenomenon is the Hanukkah bush topped with a Jewish star, a clear and striking example of how some Jews incorporate their Christian neighbors' religious practice into their own Jewish celebration. Hanukkah is not the first Jewish festival to incorporate non-Jewish elements. The holiday of Pesach, the foundational holiday of the Jewish people, also incorporates non-Israelite rituals. The early stages of the Pesach ritual. The Torah presents the Pesach offering as a way for Yahweh to distinguish between Israelite and Egyptian houses. Moses describes the ritual as follows, Exodus 21:12 and 22. Go pick out lambs for your families and slaughter the Pesach offering. Take a bunch of hyssop, dip it in the blood that is in the basin, and apply some of the blood that is in the basin to the lintel and to the 2 doorposts. None of you shall go outside the door of his house until morning. The following schematic illustrates this ritual. 1. Select a sheep for the family. 2. Slaughter the Passover. 3. Take hyssop, dip it in the animal blood and smear it on the lintel and 2 doorposts. 4. Do not go out until dawn. The text then explains why. Verse 23. For when Yahweh goes through to smite the Egyptians, he will see the blood on the lintel and the 2 doorposts, and Yahweh will pass over the door and not let the destroyer enter and smite your home. This elaborate ritual communicates to Yahweh that the house is Israelite. Notably, this verse does not mention the killing of the firstborn, the 10th plague. Compare to Yahweh's explanation to Moses in Exodus 12 and 13. While the verse does mention Egyptians generally, it doesn't specify why God will be smiting them. Thus, many scholars have suggested that the first half of verse 23 is an addition, and that 12, 21 through 22, and 23b, the oldest version of the ritual, may not have any intrinsic connection to the Egypt story at all. Instead, the Paschal offering and the placing of its blood on the doorpost was likely a freestanding pagan ritual unconnected to the Exodus story. Although the biblical authors tried to cloak this connection, scholars can still see traces of the older ritual and its meaning. An apotropaic ritual. So, here I want to kind of stop and give my thoughts of the article so far, and then also define what this technical term is. So basically, when I read this, when I was doing my research, this completely, completely surprised and shocked me. Um, so when we get to this section here, an apotropaic ritual, we look at what that word means. It's an adjective meaning to ward off evil. It's intended to ward off evil. It's intended to ward off evil, having the power to prevent evil or bad luck. If we click here in Wikipedia, apotropaic magic means to ward off. It's protective magic as a type of magic intended to turn away harm or evil influences, as in deflecting misfortune or averting the evil eye. It may be practiced out of superstition or out of tradition, as in good luck charms, amulets, or gestures such as crossed fingers or knocking on wood. Many different objects and charms were used for protection throughout history. So what this person is saying here in the article is that this is what Passover is that it is a magical ritual that was adopted into the worship of Yahweh, which is what we're going to see here. If we go back, let's just grab, the Merriam-Webster dictionary definition of the word. It's designed to avert evil. So this is all very interesting. So we continue reading the article then. From a cultural anthropological perspective, many of the elements in the Pesach ritual are associated with pagan rites. When brought together, as they are here, they form an apotropaic ritual, one meant to ward off evil. Night. Exodus 12:22 implies that this is a nighttime ritual, something which later edits of the text pick up on and emphasize, verses 6 and 10. Night was not a time people wanted to be outside. Bad things happened at night. For example, the Sodomites came to Lot's house for unsavory purposes under the cover of night. Genesis 19:4 through 10. Consider too the apprehension about traveling after nightfall in Judges 19:9 and spending the night sleeping outside, Judges 19 and 20, verse 20. Night was understood as the liminal period when curtain between the divine and human realms was drawn back. It is when men received dreams, Genesis 15:12 through 16, interacted with divine beings, Genesis 28, verses 10 through 16, and talked to the dead, 1 Samuel 28:8 and Isaiah 8:19 through 20. Liminality and blood. Before the meat is roasted and eaten, the blood of the sacrifice is collected and painted on the doors, this time reflecting liminality of place rather than of time, since doorways define where one sphere ends and another begins. In other words, it's a sort of portal. Blocking off the doorway with blood blocks the movement of demons through the liminal threshold. As the life force, blood is dangerous and should be treated cautiously. Leviticus 12:15, verses 19 through 30, and 17:6 through 11. It's interesting. Now, this is me speaking, not, departing from the article for a moment. We have like these traditions and this lore and this mythology and all these legends about vampires. Vampires really would only be demons, right? Who seek to cross over some sort of threshold to gain entrance and influence over humans. In this case, the vampire hungers after blood. It's very interesting. And so, you make a protective barrier over these doorways or these doorposts with things like garlic. That is an apotropaic ritual. It's a magic ritual to ward off a vampire, to ward off evil. So in this way, the anthropology suggests that this is what Passover is. It's a it's a ritual to ward off vampires, if you will. Okay. This is all so very interesting. Continuing with the article, biblical and ancient Near East parallels. So the association of blood and sacrifice at nighttime with demons and rituals to get rid of them can also be found other places, like in the Mesopotamian ritual of Maklu, which reverses witchcraft. Within the Bible, a number of examples come to mind. The first is the Bridegroom of Blood episode in Exodus 4:24 through 26. The text is so obscure, it is difficult to figure out who Zipporah circumcises, but the outcome is clear. The blood of the circumcision wards off Yahweh, who is seeking to kill Moses. Another example occurs with the Witch of Endor, 1 Samuel 28, as she is affectionately known, who also performs a bloody sacrifice in order to protect herself from what she perceives as evil. Interesting. The ritual of sending a goat out into the wilderness to Azazel, a demon, she questions, carrying the sins of the Israelites on its back, appears to function as a way of protecting the community, Leviticus 17. Similarly, when the elders of a town near which a person was murdered declare that their hands are clean of the victim's blood and break the neck of an heifer on the spot, this also seems like a way of warding off any unsavory consequences for the spilled blood that occurred under their auspices. Deuteronomy 21. The nature of the ritual. Based on these observations, scholars have offered two suggestions concerning the origin of these rituals. Protection from a malevolent deity. The first understands the protection ritual as warding off evil from a malevolent deity, the Maskate. Scholars speculate that the ritual originated as a springtime rite observed by a semi-nomadic shepherds when they were prepared to move the flock to new grazing grounds. Fearing demons would attack the flock, the shepherds warded them off with blood through a protection ritual known as Pesach. The term thus carries the meaning protection, such as found in Isaiah 31:5. The more familiar meaning of, quote, to pass over came about when the ritual was historicized and entered the narrative talking about Egypt. So, develops as a Mesopotamian, so it's based off of surrounding Mesopotamian pagan culture, meaning that these shepherd people, and again, this is Nathan speaking, commenting on the article, that these semi-nomadic shepherds lived in and amongst and were themselves pagan. This later gets historicized at the point of Exodus. So we have to remember that these people go into Egypt, they become slaves, they forget who their God is, correct? They don't know the name of God. Hence, Moses asks, how will these people know that you are their God? By what name shall they call you by? Because they've forgotten these things, right? They forgot the creator who called them. They've been in Egyptian bondage for hundreds and hundreds of years. And so God is again calling these people back out of Egypt, i.e., out of paganism. And it seems like this Passover ritual is a carryover of that. That's what this article is saying. Again, fascinating stuff. Not stuff that you hear, certainly not in Sunday school. I had never heard this anywhere in any Christian church. And it's remarkable. So we're going to continue on with the article. Subsection, the cult of ancestors. A second approach associates the sacrifice with the cult of ancestors. While families lived together in nuclear family units, the cult was practiced by the family, the larger kin network. Regular gathering to sacrifice and make offerings to mutual dead ancestors was an important part of organizing and maintaining living relationships with the broader clan. Zioni Zevit points out that sacrifices made on the ground, not on altars, are often associated with chthonic deities, ones that live in the ground or close to the ground. Examples of the ancestor cult are peppered through the Hebrew Bible, with the clearest being from 1 Samuel 20, where David asks leave to go attend the yearly sacrificial meal for his entire family, kinship group. As a ritual within the ancestor cult, sacrifice by the living members bound the dead ancestors to the living and the unborn. The ancestors then protected the living and the unborn, and the unborn would in turn perpetuate the cult in their own time. Both of these ideas explain the pagan parts of the sacrifice, but neither idea, in my opinion, sufficiently addresses the threat of the plague and its smiting. To this end, I think that some Mesopotamian lullabies can offer new insight. Protection rituals for babies. Mesopotamian lullabies were sung in order to ward off the demons Lamashtu, who steals away babies and men's semen in order to gain the children she never had. It is noteworthy that Jewish lore has its own Lamashtu, Lilith. In the post-biblical text, the alphabet of Ben Sira, Lilith states that she was created to harm infants. Hold on. I'm going to pause with the article for a second, and I'm just going to make a cultural observation that what do we see today rampant in culture all around the world, especially in the United States? It is this notion of abortion and how okay it is. Well, that would be the worship of the demon Lamashtu. Lilith worship. That's what abortion is. That's what this transgender stuff is. These people who want to essentially destroy and mar the human body, which the Creator has designed. It is demon worship. So now you have a name to the deity that all of these murderers perform their sacrifices to. But what's interesting is how in this article, we're seeing how animal sacrifice becomes this magical ritual to ward off demons who are interested in destroying humans. So it's this tit for tat, eye for eye, two wrongs make a right sort of thing. Because as the Ebionites and as I would argue, and many others, Genesis 1:29 is clear. Anyhow, let's proceed with the article. So here enters Lamashtu and Lilith, these demonic entities that want to just like obtain and get human children. My question would be, would these characters, therefore, is that who the destroyer is in the Exodus narrative, right? The destroyer is out to come and to destroy and to get the firstborn, but the Hebrews are supposed to cover their lintels and doorposts with blood to ward off this evil demon, Lamashtu, Lilith, right? Is that what we're to understand here? Let's read the article. In the post-biblical text, the alphabet of Ben Sira, Lilith states that she was created to harm infants. While the Mesopotamians may have been facing the realities of crib death, the lullabies all have a sense of urgency. The baby must stop crying now, for the baby's cries were thought to alert Lamashtu that an infant was nearby. In one particular lullaby, Lamashtu sends out her helper demon, the evil eye, who flies around into doorways, seeking to do harm. The lullaby describes the children as ceasing to cry through suffocation when the evil eye comes upon them. This description calls to mind the movie depictions of the Exodus where the destroyer, I think maybe, that angel of destruction, sneaks into the Egyptian houses and snuffs out the breath of the firstborn. Finally, the lullabies state that when the baby cries, it not only summons the demoness, but bothers Ili Bitum, god of the house. The noise can become so disturbing that the Ili Bitum might actually leave the house. Carol van der Toorn points out that in various Mesopotamian contexts, including the lullabies, Ilu, or Eli, should be translated not as God, but as ancestor. And thus, this phrase means the ancestor of the house. Very, very interesting. It was generally believed that the ancestor of the house offered protection for his or her descendants, like a mezuzah according to some traditions. Therefore, if the ancestor of the house leaves, true disaster can follow, since the house would now become open to demonic forces without any protection. The Pesach ritual as a lullaby. The pagan aspects of the Pesach ritual address the two concerns found in the Mesopotamian lullabies, keeping the infant safe and the ancestors appeased. With regard to the latter, the Pesach sacrifice in Exodus 12:21 maintains the cult of the ancestors by binding them to the living and the unborn as suggested by the second theory above. Reaffirming connections with the ancestors might also assuage any annoyance they experienced due to the cries of the children in the house. Exodus 12:22 through 23 ostensibly keeps the destroyer from entering the house and smiting. The text is not clear on whom will be smitten. JPS translates the latter half of the verse 23. Quote, he, Yahweh, will not let the destroyer enter and smite your home. I suggest that the individuals needing protection in the pre-Israelite shepherd ritual were infants and children. The ritual of painting the blood on the door then could be the pre-Israelite way to deal with the baby-snatching night demon Lamashtu, later identified as Lilith, just as the Mesopotamians ritually used lullabies to ward her off. In this reconstruction, the Israelites inherited these pagan rites from their semi-nomadic ancestors and later historicized and reinterpreted them into the story we are familiar with. Pesach commemorates the flight from Egypt, which happened on the heels of the 10th plague, the killing of the firstborn, Exodus 12:25 through 32. That's the end of the article. All very revealing, all very, very interesting. Dr. Christine Henriksen Garroway is Associate Professor of Hebrew Bible at HUC JIR. She received her doctorate in Hebrew, Bible, and Cognate Studies at UHC JIR. Garroway is the author of The Children in the Ancient Near East. Children in the Ancient Near Eastern Household. And here are her books that you can see here. Very interesting, fascinating stuff. It is, again, cited and referenced in this book here, The Meatless Kingdom. I'll look at other anthropological, historical sources that corroborate what Dr. Garroway is saying in her article. So, that is it. Let me know what you think, and go check out those free books. Again, I'm practically paying you in a way. I'm paying to have people read this stuff. Very interesting, fascinating, and if you read my books, I think you'll find out why it is essential for us to understand the nuances to this topic. So, have a good day.
Thank you for watching. What Jesus says to one, he says to all. Repent and believe the gospel, for the kingdom of God and of heaven is at hand.